This week, French President Emmanuel Macron arrives in Washington for a state dinner and a full plate of global crises to discuss with President Biden. Topics will likely include how the U.S. and Europe will continue to support Ukraine and contain Vladimir Putin. Joining me now, Dmitri Alperovitch, a Russian-born American cybersecurity and geopolitics expert who has tracked some of the largest threats facing the U.S. from Russia and China. And Matthew Kroenig, the Atlantic Council's acting director of the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. He's one of the world's leading authorities on nuclear weapons. Matthew, Kim Jong-un is seen again with his daughter in tow, inspecting ballistic missiles. What should we make of this?
Well, a problem that dictatorships always have is what do you do with succession? And this is a family business. Kim Jong-un's grandfather started the country, his father after him. And so I think Kim Jong-un is probably thinking about a succession plan, and by having his family members, his daughter in these public settings, possibly grooming them for succession. Meanwhile, the nuclear threat continues to grow. North Korea, only the third U.S. adversary other than Russia and China that can threaten nuclear war against the United States. So this is a serious challenge.
How should the U.S. respond to the recent escalation in missile tests from North Korea?
Well, the Biden administration has essentially put this on the back burner. I think they see it as a difficult challenge, so they've prioritized Russia, China, and other issues. But I think that's a mistake. This threat continues to grow. And so I think the right approach is basically a pressure and engagement campaign. Increase the diplomatic, economic, political pressure on North Korea so long as it pursues these destabilizing policies, but hold out the possibility for engagement and negotiations if Kim Jong-un is willing to come talk.
And what's the state of the U.S. nuclear arsenal? Can it still serve as a deterrent?
Well, the U.S. Arsenal is effective today, but it's getting old. It was built in the 70s and the 80s. They're nearing the end of their service lives. And so there is a bipartisan plan to modernize U.S. nuclear weapons over the coming 30 years. But that program has been slipping. We need to make it a priority to make sure that we have a deterrent to protect ourselves and our allies.
Dmitri, what lesson is President Xi taking from Ukraine, and what should we make of these Shanghai protests? Some protesters have even called for Xi to resign, which is unprecedented.
Well, the main lesson he's learning, of course, is that if you're going to go against Taiwan, which I think he wants to do in his lifetime, probably the next 10 years, maybe even sooner, you better be ready. You better make sure that your forces are ready, they're trained, they can execute the mission, and hopefully do it quickly from his perspective. The other lesson he may be learning, which may be the incorrect lesson, is that the United States can be deterred via the use of nuclear weapons or the threat of nuclear weapons, because he sees that while we're supporting Ukraine, we have not gone in and helped them with our own troops. That lesson may not apply to Taiwan, but that's what he may be inferring. The protests are really interesting because this is the first time that it seems like President Xi is really losing control over the zero COVID policy that they've had for the last couple of years. The cases are increasing dramatically. There are thousands of new cases a day in Beijing. If we can even believe their numbers, they're probably a lot higher. And the population is fed up. They're not willing to continue to live in lockdowns, and that is going to be very precarious for President Xi going forward.
Also in Taiwan, a pro-China party just won municipal elections. What does this tell you?
Well, this election was a municipal election. It was not about China. But the fact that the population is willing to ignore the Chinese threat and vote for a party that is very friendly to the Beijing government is an indication that the Taiwanese are just not prioritizing the threat. They don't believe it's real. They don't think an invasion is coming. And that has real implications for U.S. policy, because if Taiwan does not shape up, if they don't dramatically increase their conscription, their training, their military industrial complex to produce weapons and to integrate them into their defense forces, Taiwan is going to be in real trouble. And despite what President Biden says about us willing to come to their aid, if the Taiwanese don't fight, Taiwan is going to be doomed.
And they haven't been buying the right type of weapons, from what I understand.
No, they're focused on old-style weapons, tanks, F-16s that may not be very applicable to a war if the Chinese launch an airborne invasion, for example.
Matthew, the protests in Iran, is this a real threat to the regime? Should the Biden administration be saying more? And is the nuclear deal dead?
Well, you have to really admire the young women in Iran risking their lives standing up to this brutal dictatorship. I do think the Biden administration should be doing more to support them, both verbally and behind the scenes. Unfortunately, the sad reality when we've seen this before is that the regime is willing to kill in large numbers to stay in power. The Iranians haven't been willing to die in large enough numbers to take power. And I do fear that that may be the ultimate outcome here. On the nuclear deal, the International Atomic Energy Agency reported earlier this month that Iran is now enriching to 60% enriched uranium, a hair's breadth from weapons grade at their underground facility at Fordo. Outside experts estimate that the time it would take Iran to dash and build nuclear weapons has shrunk almost to zero. So I do fear that the game is almost over here, and the bipartisan effort to stop Iran from building nuclear weapons may have failed.
Dmitri, you were sanctioned by Putin recently. Today, Ukraine is marking 90 years since Stalin imposed a famine that killed 2 to 3 million Ukrainians. What more should the Biden administration be doing, and are you concerned that House Republicans are going to cut off aid to Ukraine?
I don't think the military aid is going to get cut off, and as long as the Ukrainians are able to get ammunition and weapon systems, they're going to keep fighting. They understand that this is an existential struggle for their country. The real problem that we face right now is we're running low on a lot of munitions, the artillery munitions, missiles, Javelin missiles that they use for anti-tank strikes. We need to be massively ramping up our production. We need to be building new factories. And the reality is these wars with near-peer competitors like Russia and China can last a long time. And if there is, God forbid, a conflict over Taiwan, we'll run out of things very, very quickly.
And Dmitri, a lot of people missed a key move by the Biden administration regarding export controls and China's chip industry. What's the significance?
Well, this was basically a massive declaration of a trade war against China, basically constraining their ability to produce advanced chips, which are necessary for weapon systems, they're necessary for advanced manufacturing and advanced electronics. And this is something that the Chinese are going to struggle a lot with. They have not been able to achieve independent production, and without ability to procure those chips, this will really impact their military significantly.
Matthew, before we go, what should we expect from the U.S.-Iran World Cup match on Tuesday? We've seen some protests. We've seen the players not sing the national anthem, then sing the national anthem, tears in the stadium. Who's going to win? What's the significance?
Yes, well, you do have to sympathize with the Iranian players, and another act of bravery refusing to sing the Iranian national anthem as a sign of protest against the regime. So part of me wants to pull with them, but I am a patriot, so USA, USA, USA.
Panel, thank you so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.